Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Coffee with Father James. I have the Scottish mug, getting in touch with my roots. Well, this past weekend in my homily, I kind of left a bit of a cliffhanger. I kind of brought you to the edge of the cliff and left you there by saying that the meeting we talked about last week, the joint meeting of Parish Pastoral Council, Finance Council, and the parish leadership team with the options committee, they did make the recommendation. And as I said on the weekend, their recommendation was unanimously accepted. So I want to tell you about what that was, and I want to tell you what that means for us as a parish, okay? What it means and what it doesn't mean. This is very, very important. But before I do that, I just want to back up. I just want to look at the why. Well, why is it that we're making these kinds of decisions, that we're going through this kind of process? You know, the church exists, our church exists as part of a continuum. You know, we talk about the communion of saints because we're a church in communion of the Spirit of God, who God is outside of time. We're a church that is not just about this present moment, geographically spread all over the world. We are temporally spread across time. We go back to the defining moment of the death and resurrection of Jesus and Pentecost, the coming of the Holy Spirit, when the church was born. And we stretch right into when Christ will come again. As we said, Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. That's what we used to say at Mass. And so we're part of a reality that stretches into the past, is lived in the present, and goes into the future. So we can't just be concerned about preserving the past or being in the present. We've got to ask ourselves questions about the future. And as we've said before, in our lifetime, in the lifetime of many people here, we've seen such tremendous change in our culture, in our society. We have a infrastructure that was built for a different era to reach people from a different time when most people went to church. Most people thought it was a good thing to go to church when the culture was predominantly Christian. And now we've left that behind. And I think that the model of church where we had cultural ascendancy is long gone. Our methodologies need to change. And one of the things in this process we've realized through the amalgamation, number one, is that for so long, we've lost sight of our core mission as a church to be a missionary church that makes disciples and equips them to live the mission of Jesus Christ. In many ways, our mission became to keep all the buildings open. In a sense, these buildings were built as a means for the mission to survive. And instead of serving the mission, our mission became to serve the buildings or to keep the buildings going. And as I said, they come from a very, very, very different time and era. So part of this amalgamation that happened with the diocese, it was because our infrastructure was starting to pull us down. We spent so much time and energy, human hours and effort and finances investing in the buildings that we didn't have time to invest humanly and financially in the only building the New Testament talks about, and that is the building of living stones, the building of people. You see, to be a church that survives, let alone thrives into the future, we need to invest in people. We need to invest in young families. We need a different way of doing church. We can't just simply be a parish that does Mass and does Mass, or a parish that just does sacraments. Sacraments have a context within the larger Christian life, and we need to do things differently. Buildings aren't going to solve everything. So we need to solve our problem with buildings. Number one, that we've got too many of them, and we need to release resources for the mission. But then we also need to have a building that properly meets our needs. And part of the problem is that the leadership of our parish has recognized that there's no one building as it presently exists, no one location that is good enough for the church of the present, never mind the church of the future. But before I say more about this, I just want to share with you some statistics that we've shared before. We shared them during the New Foundation series. I've shared them with you in a few different talks and homilies that I've given, but I want to present these to you again, because as I show you these statistics, I want you to think about, what does this mean for our future? And so the first of these is a chart that shows the demographics, so the age spread of adults. This survey was taken in 2017 at the 4 different locations. Now these numbers don't include the Polish community, but these were statistics from Immaculate Conception, St. Peter's, St. Paul's, and St. Anthony's locations. So you see the slide, you see the age breakdown from 2017, that in 2017, that's 4 years ago, 35.1% of our adults were over the age of 75. 26.2% over the age or between the age of 65 and 74, etc. And only 4.5% of our adults were under the age of 44. That was 4 years ago, okay? So you see what this means. I mean, just add on 20 years to this and do the math. You see, if we simply keep doing what we've always done, every year our parishioners get older and they get fewer. So check this next slide out. This is about mass attendance, and the diocese asked mass attendance counts to be done in 2001, 2016, and 2019. So we've got this 18-year spread between 2001 and 2019. And very quickly, you see in these statistics that between 2001 and 2019, in an 18-year period, mass attendance at Immaculate Conception dropped 72%. Think about that, 72%. Mass attendance at St. Anthony's dropped 61%. At St. Paul's, 68% reduction. At St. Peter's, 50% reduction. In the entire parish, that's a 58% reduction in mass attendance. So not only is the parish getting older every year, it's getting fewer, it's getting smaller, it's shrinking, it's diminishing. And so these are shocking for us. And you see that even these pre-COVID numbers, to go from 1,862 people in 2001 down to 782 in 2019, I mean, that's pre-amalgamation. That's pre-COVID. We don't even know where we're going to land post-COVID. I mean, the world is different. And yet we still have all the buildings. And in many ways, we can have parishioners wanting the same mass schedule, And so this is the challenge ahead of us, to have our buildings serve the purpose of mission. I want to show you just a couple of other statistics that should tell us that our need for change is immediate and urgent. And so here's the first one. Now, these are numbers of infant baptisms at 10-year intervals starting from 1969. Now, I'm on the steps of St. Peter's Church. So the year this church was opened, 1969. Infant baptisms in all what is now our parish, 271 that year, down to 2019, 2 years ago, 26. More than a 90% reduction. But here's the thing, it's not enough to give a snapshot, a moment in time, the fact that, in 1969 we had 271, and in 2019, 26, over a 90% reduction. It's the trajectory, it's the movement. See, this is a dynamic change. It's continuing, it's ongoing. That trajectory, the direction of decline is only going to continue if we don't fundamentally change something. And you can obviously see what this means for the future of our church. And here's another very scary statistic. This is the number of weddings, again, looking at from 1969, 10-year intervals, going from 105 in 1969, and that little number that is so small you can't read was 3. In 2019, we had 3 weddings. That's a 97, over a 97% reduction. Where do we expect children to be baptized to come from if we don't have Catholic weddings? Like, this tells us, I hope, I'm not telling you this to make you depressed. I'm telling you this because our reliance on faith being passed on by biological osmosis. Catholic people have Catholic kids who grew up to have Catholic kids who grew up to have Catholic kids. That method no longer works. We need an entirely different method of being church. And that means that we need to invest differently. We can't just be about buildings and masses. And we need to have buildings that allow us to do what we need to do. Okay. So what's the solution? Well, that question is a big question, and I look forward to exploring that with you in the weeks and months and indeed years to come, because there are things that work. There are things that make a difference. Here's the thing, this decline, we're not doomed to follow that path. Like, we can do something. Here's the thing, brothers and sisters, we have been in palliative care for years, and we've been struggling to pay the bills. And even barely paying the bills of palliative care, we're saying, oh, we're okay, we're paying the bills. We're in palliative care. Even if we can pay the bills, we are in palliative care. And here's the thing, we don't have to be in palliative care. We can turn this around. We can get out of palliative care. We can get into an intensive care unit, and then we can go from intensive care unit into a step-down unit. Then we can get into the regular ward. Then we can get out and get into rehab, and then we can be released and not be in the hospital anymore. It is possible. I didn't plan to use hospital metaphors, but there you go. We don't have to be in decline. We can be a healthy church, but it means if we want to see something different, we need to do something differently, right? That's the thing. It's like, well, God wouldn't let that happen. He seems to have been allowing it to happen for at least 50 years. I think God is saying, why are you letting this happen? I've given you everything you need to have life and have it to the full, to be a church that is fruitful. Jesus says, my Father is glorified in this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. The Lord, I think, is saying to us, when are you going to get your act together? When are you going to take everything I've given you and change it so that it serves the mission of my Son? And that's why we did the New Foundation series. From September through December 12th last year, we had 190 people register for that series. And on average, from week to week, either online or in person, we had about 140 people show up. And many more have watched it on video. And if you haven't watched that series, that 7-session series, please go back on our YouTube channel and watch them. They're really important for moving forward into the future. At the end of that series, we identified 5 options for our future buildings. I'd like to tell you about that. And we formed an options committee to review those options and to research them and to analyze them and to make this recommendation to the parish. So what were the 5 options? Well, again, recognizing that no one location as it presently exists was good enough, we had to talk about what do we do with our buildings. We also had committed through this process to having 2 locations, not to think of our parish as just where you have Sunday Mass. And we committed to a second location in North Dartmouth for outreach to the poor. And it's looking like that's going to be the St. Anthony's location. There's 1.5 acres of land there. We have room for parking. We already have many activities, the food bank, the furniture bank, the House of Hope, community chaplaincy, 12-step program. We've got a lot of activities happening there already. We wanted another location that would be a center for Sunday Mass. The North Dartmouth location would also be a place for weekday Mass. The Polish community meet there on Sundays, and the Ukrainian Catholics meet there once a month. And there's room for development and growth in that location. One other location for Sunday Mass that would be central, that would give us the space we need to do what we need to do as a church. So we looked at the 5 options. Option 1 was do nothing. Option 2 was sell everything and find a new spot of land and build a new building. Option 3 was come to this location at St. Peter's and repair the building. You can see this building is 52 years old. It needs a lot of work. So we repair this building, but leave it as is. Option 4, repair this building and build onto this building, build modules onto this building. Option 5 was demolish this building and build something new on this location. Those were the options we looked at. Why did we look at those options only? Well, again, our other 2 locations, Immaculate Conception and St. Paul's, are very small parcels of land with barely enough room for the buildings that exist, with very little room for parking, no room to develop and grow the buildings. There's just not the space to grow those buildings. So that was our starting point. So very quickly, option 1, do nothing. Well, I hope these statistics I've shown you convince you that option 1 is not a real option. Effectively, it's what we've been doing for decades and it hasn't been working. So option 1 off the table. Option 2, sell everything and build new. That was a real option and we researched it and investigated it. Option 3, repair this building but don't change it. We decided early on in the process that that was not a real option for us because all we would get is what we've got. we'd have a better version of it, but it's essentially the same. See, the problem with the St. Peter's location is that it's got 7 exits that lead to the parking lot. There's no adjoining areas for people to gather. There's no hall connected. There's no meeting rooms connected. There's no place to do kids ministry or family ministry or a foyer to gather in, a place to sit down and have coffee. Like, you have to go up a hill. Like, this is not enough. And so option 3 out the window. Option 4, well, option 4 sounds good because it would give us continuity. It's the biggest building. This building can seat 585 people. But option 4 would depend on whether or not this building is actually solid. Because one of the things we wanted to look at is, like, what do we need to do to bring our church into 2070? 50 years. We're looking for a 50-year solution. Is this building going to make it? Are the foundations solid? We needed to do an engineering study. And then option 5, demolish, build new on this site. Obviously, to do that, we would have to sell a lot of our property, and it would be expensive. But here's the thing. If the cost of renewing this place is pretty close to building new, maybe that's what we want to do. So anyway, that's what the options committee had to do their homework about. Now, about 4 weeks ago, they finished the report and they sent it to me, where they chose, or they researched all of these options. And I think the report was about 36 pages. And that report was presented to a joint meeting of Parish Pastoral Council, Finance Council, and leadership team this past Thursday night. And they recommended option 4. And that option was unanimously accepted. So let me back up. I already said option 1 was off the table. Option 2, sell everything, buy new. We got real estate specialists and we did the research. We looked at all the available land within our parish boundaries. We identified 4 locations that would be large enough to build a new church building on. There were several problems. Number 1, these locations were at the farthest end, at the outskirts of our parish boundaries. None of them were on land that was zoned institutional. We would have to work to change the zoning. Whether we would get it changed or not is a matter that would be in question. And then simply, some of them were not yet on the market. And even if they were on the market, we would be looking at $15 to $20 million just to buy the land, okay? So you see where I'm going with this? I mean, we looked at buying chapters up by Micmac Mall. Like, we looked into it, and this is all in the report. And then if you build a new building, the building's going to be 15 to 20 million to build new. So here's the thing. Selling everything and buying new, $30 to $40 million solution. And no guarantee that we'd be able to build. And it would be on the outskirts where, so that really put the rest to option 2. I already said option 3 was not good. That left us with option 4 and option 5. It boiled down to this. We got a very in-depth engineering study done on the foundations of the foundation, the walls, the roof. We got a building condition study. It's 96 pages long. Seriously, I've gone through it, saying everything we need to do. Do you know what it's going to cost to repair this building? $2 million, $2 million bucks. But we'd be paying that over the next 24 years anyway. But in order to ensure this building goes 50 years, $2 million bucks. But then we would want to build onto it. And the engineering study says that they think it can be done. And so think about, on the side of this building, a large hall that can hold 300-400 people that's connected to the building. On this side, we have 2 floors of meeting space, gathering spaces, a Eucharistic Adoration Chapel, office space, a space for kids ministry, for youth ministry, a production studio, a bookstore, a room for wakes and for funerals. And then coming down from the top of this building, down a facade that would turn where I am right now into a foyer that would be incredibly welcoming. Anyway, it's just a crazy dream, but we would add on to this building. And we believe, and the committee believed, that we could do this for 60% less than the cost of a new building on this location. And so it makes sense. It would be the least disruptive option. It would give us the greatest continuity. This location is smack right in the center of our parish boundary. And it would give us a building that I believe would help us carry out the mission of Jesus Christ. It would give us one location where Sunday Eucharist is celebrated, where we can gather, even though we might be a parish where people meet in homes all over the city and where we have great activity and ministry happening at the north Dartmouth location. We also have weekday mass out there and a chapel and a place of prayer. So that's the recommendation. And that's the recommendation that was received. Now we've got a ton of work to do. What does this mean for us? It means that now we've done all this work, we need to write to the bishop and ask for, here's what we're asking for, that the bishop give the go-ahead to begin a formal process of consultation and discernment about the closure of Immaculate Conception in St. Paul's Church, because that's effectively what option 4 means. It means closing these 2 buildings. In order to bring about the solution, this option 4 solution, we would need to close these buildings, put them on the market, and possibly sell some of the land on this location at St. Peter's to be able to do this. Still lots of questions, lots of things that are not known yet. But we need to begin a formal process. You know, some of the criticism over the last couple of months has been, oh, Father James, you know, the decision's already been made to close these 2 churches, and there's been no consultation. Well, guess what? I don't have the authority to make this decision. Only the bishop has the authority to make a decision to close a church. Only the bishop, not me, not our pastoral council, not our leadership team. Only the bishop has the authority to give us permission to even begin a formal process of consultation and discernment. So all the work we've done thus far is to write to the bishop and say, Bishop, we've done our homework. We've done a lot of work. I think the report that we're going to be sending the bishop with appendices is going to be over 150 pages long. And the simple request is, Bishop, we're hoping you're going to tell us that this idea has merit. That's about it. And that we can go ahead to a formal consultation. And that's what we would do. In September, we would have meetings. We would have open meetings with parishioners, one to do with the Immaculate Conception location, one with the St. Paul location. And the committee we formed to do this will meet with any group of parishioners. The consultation that takes place is for all parishioners who would be impacted by this decision. And guess what? If you're a parishioner of Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish, you will be impacted by this decision. Whichever way the decision goes, you will be impacted. So during September through to Christmas and possibly beyond, we're going to go through a process of consultation, meeting with parishioners, listening to parishioners' concerns, to parishioners' feedback. And at the end of that process, we have to create another report and make another request of the bishop. It needs to go to the Council of Priests. And if the bishop says yes, then he issues a formal decree for the closure of these buildings. And that's going to take several other months. And then we have to go through a whole other process. We have to begin a grieving process. We have to celebrate the history of those locations, honor those locations, honor the people who have put their blood, sweat, and tears over the years in maintaining those buildings. You know, sometimes I can come across negatively when I talk about, you know, all the work of maintaining our buildings. You know, we've got parishioners who are heroes. What they did was heroic in maintaining those buildings, all the fundraisers and all the hard work. And we want to honor that. We want to thank them for all of that, all of the work that they've done. We want to honor the history, celebrate the presence, but all of this is so that we can move into the future to be the church that God is calling us to be. So I want you to be very clear, dear friends, what this means. This report is simply a request to the bishop to begin the formal process of consultation and discernment. Doesn't mean that the decision has been made. It's not our decision to make. It's the bishop's decision to make. We need to work together. We need to come together. We need to pray. And here's the final thought. This is not about losing something. And I want to speak specifically, if you're a parishioner who identifies as being from the Immaculate Conception location, we had Mass there this morning. It's a gorgeous little church. You know, I said this a few weeks ago, it's the oldest physical Catholic church building in Dartmouth. It's the oldest one right now. And St. Paul's is actually the second oldest, I think. Pretty sure the second oldest Catholic church building in Dartmouth. So there's a lot of history here, or a lot of richness. I know it's difficult. But dear friends, I hope that you would see that this is not just about losing something. It is about losing something, but it's also about gaining something. The kind of location that I described, the community I described in my homily this past weekend, it's what is available to all of us. And I hope that you see that as part of what you have. And I hope that if God willing, we do see this new building emerge, that we would do our best to incorporate some of the beautiful artwork from these locations and bring them into the new building of Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish. So I think there's only one other thing to add. Looks like those crows are back, those same crows from last week, except they're over there and not above my head. This coming week, tomorrow, if you watch this video on Tuesday, there's no weekday Mass on this coming Wednesday. It's my day off. Father Rob is on vacation. Next Wednesday, Father Pat, it's his first day. Remember, Father Pat Cosgrove is helping us out. We're going to tell you a bit more about him in a few weeks. But Father Pat is going to be doing Mass at 12 p.m. We're going to move our Wednesday Mass to 12 p.m. That's the only time he's available to help. So Wednesday Mass going forward, as of next week, on the 28th, is going to be Wednesday Mass at St. Peter's at 12 noon. Okay? I hope that's helpful to you. And finally, this coming Sunday, remember the farewell for Father Rob. He's going to be preaching at all the Masses, so you can come to any Mass and say goodbye, say thank you to him. But we're going to have a special gathering between the two morning Masses from 10:10 to 10:50 here in the parking lot, right here. If it's raining, we're going to go next door. The school, we've had some great conversations with the folks at the school, and they're willing to let us into the gym on Sunday morning if there is inclement weather. So, friends, thanks so much for your patience with me, for lasting through this video. I know it was a little bit longer than usual, but I think it's a pretty important video. And as I said in the weekend, let's be peacemakers. Let's presume the best of one another. Let's, not let our thinking get ahead of us, and let's strive to be friends with one another and pray for one another. God bless all of you. Take care.